I just finished watching Season 2 of The Boys, and man, you know what? I was very hyped about Season 1. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, but somehow they topped it. And I hear this about The Boys, that it's going to continue to just keep topping each other. Season 3 and Season 4 get absolutely insane, which, by the way this season concluded, I'm kind of like, okay, interesting. I don't know exactly where the story's going to go, but I can't wait for it. Today we're going to be talking about Season 2. We're going to go through the plot, what I liked, what I didn't like, if there was anything that I wanted to talk about. And as always, guys, I would love to know what you guys think about it down below afterwards. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's talk about The Boys. So, of course, in Season 1, we were left off with quite the cliffhanger there, with Stillwell being murdered. We jumped the gun right away because what happens is The Boys tries to go inform a CIA, somebody over in the CIA, somebody really high up, about the murder of Stillwell, and then boom, she's dead. Boom, she's dead. We're like diving right into it. So it's continuing the story. Everything is really picking up. The boys are officially fugitives. They are on the run. Frenchie and the guys want to call Butcher back. And then, of course, we're here for our Season 2 story. We're all set up. The boys are back. The boys are ready to go. But in the meantime, with that, we are officially introduced to Stormfront. And Stormfront is the new member of the Seven. Another character that we're introduced to is Gus Fring, which I always forget his name. I have it written down over here. I have a bunch of point form things that I need to talk about. So Stan. Stan Edgar is Gus Fring. I'm probably going to keep talking and referring to him as Gus Fring. But we are figured out that the CEO of Vought is really in charge of everything, and it's not necessarily Homelander. So what Homelander tries to do, because Homelander is the Seven, he thinks that he's completely in charge, and everything seems like he's in charge because he can just do what he wants and he can just kill people, right? But he failed to intimidate Stan because, of course, he doesn't want the public to go against him. And this is something that we learn about Homelander throughout the entire series is, of course, in Season 1, we figured out that he had big mommy issues, right? So that's why he was really clinging to Stillwell. And what we've learned this season is that Homelander is just so desperate for approval that that's really the only thing that you can get above Homelander. It's like, hey, we're going to threaten your public appearance, and that's what's going to hit him. That's what's going to hit him really hard. So he tries to intimidate Gus. Gus doesn't have it. Gus threatens him. He has to accept Stormfront joining the Seven, and ends up leading to a beautiful relationship between the two. But that's not exactly what we're going to be talking about. So we are I'm a little bit confused at this point because Homelander goes back to see Becca and his son. Where's Butcher? I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen because Butcher finally got to see Becca, right? But Homelander just goes down to visit. Becca, of course, doesn't like it, but there's nothing she can do about it, and she's just living there with Ryan. Doesn't seem like Butcher's there, but at this point, we don't really know. And this is the big thing that I couldn't wait to see. And of course, I didn't really get to see it. But in the meantime, we are also brought back to the Deep. And I gotta say, guys, I really just do not care for the Deep. I love this show. I love everything about it. But one thing I just don't care about is the Deep. And, oh, poor me, I want to get back into the Seven. It's not even just because I don't like him. Like I expressed in my previous video, if you happen to not seen that, you're just clicking on the Season 2 video. What I expressed was, I don't feel bad for the Deep. I don't care. He assaulted women, and that is just a completely unforgivable act, in my opinion. What he did to Annie was unforgivable. And it seemed like he's actually trying to be better. But then as the season ended, which I'm going to get into, I'm not entirely sure if the Deep actually had its redemption arc or if he's pretending. Regardless, he ends up joining a church. He wants to get back in the Seven. He's convinced that he can get back into the Seven. But of course, I don't think that anybody really believed that the Deep was going to be let back into the Seven. Either way, heading back to the story with the boys, Butcher ends up getting an arrangement with Mallory where it's like, hey, if we can capture this new soup terrorist, I'll do anything you want with that. Just give me Becca's location. And I'm sitting here at this point confused because Butcher was with Becca at the end of Season 1. He woke up with Becca. He woke up at her house. And I'm like, oh my God. And I don't know what Homelander did. I don't know how he possibly got out of there. We have no clue, and it was actually driving me crazy because I wanted to see Butcher and Becca back together. I thought it would have been super cool, but we don't know. So he's looking for her. He's looking for her location now. That's where it doesn't really make sense, right? So what happens is that's a new mission. They want to go hunt down this new soup terrorist, and I'm just going to say like soup attacker because I don't know if that T word is YouTube sensitive, so I'm going to stop saying it. I'm sorry, everybody, but that's how it's going to roll from this point forward. So it ends up being Kimiko's younger brother. He has superpowers. Butcher was going to kill him, But Huey ended up getting in the way, and Butcher didn't like that. But we see this a lot with Butcher, where he just wants to kill some Subs, and then somebody else stops him. But anyways, they managed to just subdue him, and it's Kimiko's brother. They have this beautiful moment together, and he seemingly was going to come along with them. We then move on to a story between Annie and A-Train, because A-Train wants to just rat Annie out completely. He's like, hey, what are you doing with the boys? You are against Vought. You're against the Seven. You are an absolute traitor. But then Annie just comes back with the knowledge that he ended up murdering Popclaw. So there's tension between Annie and A-Train. Actually, there's tension between everybody in the Seven right now, and even just Vought. Seemed like something was eventually going to explode, but as of right now, nothing really happened. I still don't like 8-Train, man. We're gonna get into him a little bit later. But anyways, after that, we are officially introduced to Homelander wanting to be a father. Homelander misses his son. Homelander wants a son. He forces himself into the house of Becca and Ryan, and we see that Becca just keeps Ryan secluded from the world. She doesn't want him to grow up like Homelander because, of course, he's Homelander's son, and something that we see throughout the entire season is that Ryan is arguably just as powerful as Homelander, and that leads to, of course, the big issue down the road, which we're going to get to. Heartbreaking, I know, but it's horrible. So it's just really, really uncomfortable moments, and I'm still sitting here wondering, how did Butcher escape? But Homelander's like, hey, Ryan, buddy, how's it going? And it's clear that Ryan's a little bit uncomfortable with him, but at the same time, what can they do? What can Becca do? There's nothing that Becca can do about it. Homelander wants in, he walks in. That's totally okay. But in the meantime, after that uncomfortable scene, we're led to another uncomfortable scene, that being the Deep, poor Deep, you know? So here's the thing. He has this big moment of like, you're worthy type thing. He looks himself in the mirror and kind of accepts who he is, values himself. He's part of this new church. I watched a couple videos on the boys after I was done, because typically what I like to do is watch a couple season recap videos, so it's like more fresh in my head, especially these early episodes that we're going to talk about. What apparently happened was the Deep hallucinated his gills speaking to himself. I might just be stupid, but I thought the gills were actually speaking, and I was sitting there like, what am I watching? But then there was stuff like that all the time where I sat down and I'm like, what am I watching? So I thought the gills were actually talking to him. So he's accepted his gills, but apparently he was hallucinating them, where it's like, hey, Deep, know your worth. Look at us. Look at us. Look at us. And I'm like, dude, this is the only part of the story, like literally the only part of the story that I just did not care about at all. Other than that, we have a developing story between Maeve and her ex-girlfriend, who has a very complicated relationship, but at the end of the day, Maeve just expresses that she's worried that if Homelander finds out that she's in another relationship, Homelander is going to kill the girlfriend. After that, we're brought back to Homelander, back in Town of Uncomfortableness. So Homelander wants to have a superhero little buddy. You know what's funny, by the way, is the show that I watched before The Boys was Invincible, and you have Omni-Man teaching Mark his powers, and it's just this like little wholesome thing. They're having fights. I know the relationship's a little bit dicey. Not going to talk about it in case anybody hasn't watched Invincible, but it was wholesome at the beginning, right? Everybody was like, it's like father-son type thing here. You got to learn your powers. And then we have Homelander and Ryan. Ryan, this shy kid who doesn't even think that he has powers, who just does not think that he's like Homelander at all. Of course, Becca's also kind of grooming him to be a very secluded, scared little boy. And Homelander's right to some extent, where like a boy needs his father. Every boy needs his father. That just leads to an absolute disaster, right? But the problem is, you don't need a father when that father is Homelander. Here's an interesting question. What's better, no father or a father like Homelander? Or maybe a piece of crap father, because a father like Homelander is pretty bad. So Homelander goes around, he wants to push Ryan into using his powers. And we're brought to this funny scene, which I totally expected when it was happening, because they found themselves on a roof, right? And Homelander's like, you can fly. Just do it. Just do it. It's like this father-son type thing where it's like, hey, just swim, and you throw the kid in the pool. Like, that's what my daughter's 3 months right now. That's how I plan on teaching her how to swim. All right, swim. I'm not going to toss her in the pool, but you kind of get the point, right? You just need to get him into it, and that's what Homelander's talking about Ryan. And I saw it coming, man. I don't know about you guys. I saw it coming, pushes him, and then boom, falls on his face. But because he has superpowers, I guess he's okay. Becca came out. Obviously, he was hurt, or he passed out or something to that extent. Becca's like, you need to leave. She's freaking out. Homelander starts getting aggressive towards Becca, and this is where we figure out that Ryan has his powers. Homelander always said he had powers, but we didn't see those powers yet. We see that Ryan's quite powerful, and he ends up having his own little blast. He attacks Homelander in order to protect his mother, in order to protect Becca. So this is where it got really interesting for me, because I'm kind of like, Becca's in captivity right here. Is Ryan going to be the one to fight against Homelander? Because nobody is as powerful as Homelander, but maybe Homelander's seed is just as powerful, if not for whatever reason, is more powerful than Homelander. So I found that very interesting. But on the other side of the coin, we also have the developing story going on in the background where Annie has secretly leaked to the media what Compound V is and why superheroes have their powers. It's not from God. They're not gifts from God. All the superheroes are completely man-made. In the meantime, though, back over with the story with the boys. So Kenji, which is Kimiko's brother, they have a little bit of a tough conversation. We don't really know exactly where Kenji lies, but Kenji ends up escaping. We have this scene where there's a little bit of a chase down, but it ends up leading him to Stormfront. And this is where we really get to know who Stormfront really is, because we find out that Stormfront is incredibly racist. Like, incredibly. Like, I'm not even going to repeat what she said on YouTube, because that would definitely get my channel just booted out of here. But she's just straight up hating people for the way we are, or why they are, and we later figure out that she's part of a specific group from the early-ish 1900s. Later on, we find that out, but they're building up to that kind of thing, right? So what happens, they have a little bit of a fight. Kimiko freezes. Kimiko doesn't exactly spring into action. She ends up having this horribly gruesome death for Kimiko's brother and just does not care about it. Does not care. And the important thing over here is Stormfront also disobeyed Homelander's orders. He didn't want this to happen. She slaughtered multiple civilians. She was being incredibly racist doing so. And Stormfront ended up framing Kenji. And it's like, hey, I took care of him. Kenji destroyed all the civilians' lives. Kenji did all this destruction around. And that's then the 7 end up looking a little bit better. But this is the beginning of Stormfront starting to get a little bit of influence. In the meantime, Gus Fring ended up talking about the leak in the news. We don't really know at this time. Well, we knew as the viewers, but society didn't know where this information necessarily came from. Tried to really bring down the severity level of Compound V, and he blamed it on a group of rogue scientists. And another thing that I really love about this show is this is exactly what would happen if something like this were to actually happen. This is the response that would happen, right? I'm not necessarily saying all superheroes are bad, but there definitely would be a group of them that aren't so great, and then they'd be framed and frame someone else as a destruction. And like I talked about so many times in the first part, man, your girlfriend dies to a superhero. There's nothing you can do about it besides maybe get some shut up money. That's exactly what would happen if Compound V was real. It would be like, oh, just a couple people who just went rogue. It's totally okay. Our stock prices need to stay the same. That's what I love about this. It's a superhero movie, but it's about as realistic as you could possibly get. We then circle back over to the boys, and Mallory ends up finding information on Becca's whereabouts. She provides it to Butcher, and Butcher literally does nothing but just straight up infiltrate the facility. Doesn't care. He finds Becca, has to go into hiding a little bit, but Becca figures out a way to see him. They meet together. They have this beautiful reconnection together. And the problem is, she is refusing to leave with Butcher because he does not accept Ryan. And I knew this was going to be an issue. And if any, I would imagine most of my viewers over on this channel are male. It's a really tough spot to be in. First of all, it's a real tough spot to be in, because you can't take care of another man's child. Nobody would want to do that. I couldn't do that myself. And the problem is, you have like the love of your life. She was a victim of, the R word. She was a victim. It's a horrible thing. And now the kid is half Homelander, but the kid is also innocent. The kid hasn't done anything. The kid hasn't done anything wrong. It's wrong to kill the kid, obviously. But it's such a tough spot for somebody like Butcher to be in. Ultimately, like, there's nothing you can do about the kid. The kid deserves to have a life, obviously. Obviously. You don't just kill him because it has some Homelander genes, right? The problem comes from, having to take care of somebody you hate, especially someone else's kid. I could never take care of somebody else's kid, like as my own. Like, of course, I'm not talking about like babysitting or anything, but like for my wife to bring another man's kid and have me accept that. I couldn't. I couldn't. Of course, like, all respect to the kid, but I'm talking about I wouldn't be able to take him as my own, and that's what Becca wanted to do. So Becca says she can't go with Butcher. She can't go. And she said that Butcher would find a way to get rid of him because she knows how he is. And that's kind of what I was thinking too. It's unfortunate, but as of right now, they are not going together. Of course, that ends up changing, but there's nothing that Butcher can really do. They have a beautiful moment together. Butcher gets sad. Becca gets sad. You can tell, and the actors did a really good job too. You can tell that they all love each other. But in the meantime, Black Noir figures out exactly where Butcher is. Over on the Huey side of things, though, Annie decides to officially join them. And I really like that, by the way, the relationship they all had. MM didn't really want to take on Annie, but Annie is obviously not a liability at all. So they figured out, and I apologize, I don't really remember how they figured this out off the top of my head. I know the information came from Mallory about this superhero named Liberty, and I'm sorry. I'm getting so many notifications over here. I need to mute that. Let's take care of that. Sorry about that, everybody. But they figured out that Stormfront is a million years old. Well, not necessarily, but she was part of World War II, and the racially motivated acts are completely explained by the person she is. I'm trying to avoid using the word on YouTube. Apologies, everybody. So, don't know how it is, but Stormfront is not who she says that she is. But Homelander ends up taking a little bit of action because Homelander does not like Stormfront kind of taking the shine. He's upset, and again, like, man, Homelander's actors. I will go as far as say he's one of the greatest actors of all time. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I know this is an unpopular take, but I think Tom Holland is up there too. But man, he's so good at like just looking bothered. You can tell just by looking at him in the facial expressions that guy is making apologies. I don't know the actor name, but you look at him and you can tell exactly what he's thinking. This dude can act with dialogue without saying anything. He's upset that Stormfront is overtaking him. And you know what's funny? Another thing about how I loved about how much this show is realistic. Stormfront takes over Homelander by using memes, and they express that. That's exactly how it would work nowadays. Exactly. You use memes. That's why I love this show, man. It's so good. So Homelander is all hot and bothered. He ends up kicking out A-Train. A-Train just, hey, you're out of here. You can't walk anymore. And he also outs Maeve for being the way that she is, for having a relationship with another woman. But apparently that wasn't okay in the eyes of the Seven, but they turned it into some big Maeve, you're gay type thing, right? That's all the media was. In the meantime, though, we have a few little side stories over here that I don't think that there's really necessarily anything to stick around on and just really dissect into. So Frenchie has a realization about why he's so protective over Kimiko and wants the best for her, because he's guilty of his past crimes. And honestly, from the way that we've seen Frenchie, and I know like the things that he has done are inexcusable, them just going around killing people, all the crimes that he has supposedly committed before this, all of that's inexcusable, but you can tell deep down, it's kind of like Jesse from Breaking Bad. You can tell that Frenchie has a heart, but regardless, his motivation is because he has guilt over his past crimes. Doesn't make it okay, but a little bit understandable. Also, we end up circling back to the Deep, who's going to have an arranged marriage. I don't think they said why at this moment, but there's also another moment where we look at the TV and Butcher is being framed for the murder of Stillwell. He infiltrated the home, blew it up. Of course, that's exactly, again, the show being as realistic as possible, never getting the true story. Continuing on, though, a video of Homelander just makes the rounds on the internet because he has killed 2 civilians, just Homelander being Homelander. So now there's protests against him, and this is where I'm sitting back and I'm like, oh man, Homelander's gonna crack. He's gonna crack soon. So this is where we are introduced to Stormfront, excuse me, and her memes. She's like, hey, this is the way to capture the public. We need you to regain popularity. And they end up entering a very intimate relationship, a very messed up one, where you could tell Homelander, and this is what I liked about the writing too, because you could tell that Homelander had these BDSM instincts, and it's not necessarily from a fun play aspect. It's from a violent aspect, because when he was in relationship with his mommy, he wanted to just like hit her, right? And then she's like, no, gentle. And now he's entering a relationship with somebody who likes the pain, because it's so strange, dude. He's burning her tits off. And then she's like, ow, ow, it hurts, it hurts. Homelander actually stops, and then she's like, don't stop. And then you can just tell this is the type of relationship. So they start throwing each other around the room. They start really, really hurting each other. And there's another scene where, incredibly uncomfortable, they stop a criminal. They don't want to turn him in because the police aren't going to do anything. So Homelander starts choking him and blowing up his head while they're kissing each other, and while Stormfront is feeling him up. Like, some of the sexual scenes in this show, man, are just insane. Like the deep getting fingered. What was the other one? Oh, somebody dying by getting face sat. You know, like, it must be so uncomfortable to act some of these things. You know, like, could you imagine? Oh, Anthony, is that his name? Anthony Starr? I think it's Anthony Starr. I'm gonna sound really stupid if it's not, but could you imagine acting this? You have a girl like rubbing down your crotch. It must feel good, right? Obviously, right? Like, I always think about that because these actors must be left with blue balls, and you're feeling good because a girl's touching you, and your hand is squeezing another guy's neck while cameras are everywhere. That's what I always think about. I kind of take myself out of watching this show because it's like, man, that must have been really tough to act. Like we're going to talk about with Lamplighter and watching cuck porn, you know? It's just insane. So Butcher, anyways, I spent way too much time talking about that. Butcher's all sad. He goes to visit his dog. He goes for a little stroll with the dog, and I love that as a dog person. I can't imagine seeing my dog. Like, she's with me right now. She's sleeping every single time I record videos. She's so cute. Oh, I love her, man. So I can't imagine just leaving her for a long period of time. Butcher wants to go see his old dog. He plans his retirement, takes the dog for a little stroll, and Huey and MM end up finding him. I think Annie was with them. I don't recall if Annie was with them. Doesn't really matter. But they end up noticing that Black Noir was watching. So there's a little bit of attack with Black Noir. They have a really cool fight scene. Butcher's aunt is stuck in the middle of all of this, but they end up coming up with this great plan where it's like, hey, we're going to call the fire department. There's going to be witnesses if you're going to come in and kill us. Butcher wants everybody to run away, everybody to be safe for themselves, but Huey and MM don't want to leave Butcher. They end up fighting Black Noir, but the fighting has a little bit of a pause on it because Gus ends up calling, or they end up contacting Gus because they have videos on Ryan that they're threatening. They're threatening Black Noir with. They're threatening Gus with. And obviously that information can't go out, so he said, if this video never sees the light of day, I'll call up Black Noir. It was literally that simple, and the fight ends up thankfully being put to a stop. I was hoping that somebody didn't end up dying there. Now, this is where the season really picks up and heads towards like a 3-episode climax because we have the entire psychiatric hospital, which is actually a Compound V type thing that we're going to see a little bit more of course. So MM, Frenchie, and Kimiko all have this really fun hospital trip, and they want to go take a look at what's going on with the captive Compound V patients. Excuse me. There's a really cool scene where they argue about getting into the stretcher. It's really funny. But then what happens is, after having a sort of successful mission, Frenchie locks eyes with somebody who they have a past with, and that is a former Seven member, that being Lamplighter. And what happens is they start fighting. After that, they start fighting immediately, and Lamplighter just completely burns down a door. So what we figure out is Lamplighter's power is he carries a match with him, and of course he can just, I guess, magnify the fire. Just breaks out, and then we have a girl who looks just like 11, strolls out, just zombie-ish, walks away. Her power's nuts, which I don't think we saw just yet. Yeah, we did in that scene, because she just starts exploding people's heads. Just exploding people's heads. That's the power that we've seen, and now we have the answer of who's actually using this power, but then I'm confused because this girl has the blow-up power, and then that lady at the end of the season also has that power, or seemingly has that power. I don't get it. Maybe they're stabilizing Compound V. They can figure out what superpowers people are getting. I don't know. All the psychiatric patients get out, and they all have superpowers, right? So everybody's on the run. Everybody's killing each other. Nurses are dying. So what happens is they end up going into, I guess, a physician's office or a surgical room. Doesn't really matter, but they end up yapping with Lamplighter a little bit. We end up learning a little bit of Frenchie's past and the situation that they had with Lamplighter. It was a really heartwarming story with Frenchie having to leave, and this is why people look at Frenchie as being unreliable, because his friend, or his best friend, ended up ODing, and he had to go. He chose his friend over his job, and that's what people were really kind of grinding him for. He's unreliable. He's untrustworthy. So the point being, them and Lamplighter end up working together. After a huge scuffle, and after Huey ends up getting really, really horribly injured because one patient got out and ended up flipping the car, where he said that he was scared, Butcher had to end up killing him. Or was it Annie or Butcher? No, Annie ended up killing somebody that's a little bit down the road, but Butcher ended up having to kill that patient that was seemingly just scared. The car starts rolling, and Huey has a very, very fatal injury, so they need to dip and leave everybody else there. So Frenchie, Kimiko, and now Lamplighter are hiding, but Stormfront comes in because Stormfront was kind of in charge of this whole operation that they're trying to have with Compound V being injected and stabilized into adults. Lamplighter just blames the whole thing on somebody who is dead. Stormfront kind of freaks out. She takes off. Everything is kind of okay. But Butcher and Annie and Huey are on the run now. On the run because they don't have a car. Annie ends up hitchhiking against somebody. They pretend to be the FBI. The guy gets out of his car and kind of figures out that they're not actually the FBI. So because he pulled a gun, Annie, and I'm almost sure this is her first kill because she felt horrible about it. And this is also where you can see Annie's character kind of developing. This is something that I was worried about in the first season because Annie joined the superheroes and wanted to just do good and be the model superhero star that everybody expects her to be. She wants to help save the world, but now she actually expressed to Butcher where she didn't really care. She didn't actually really feel bad. She's just like, why did you pull the gun, you idiot? She doesn't feel bad. She's kind of looking at him like he's stupid, just another guy in her way. And then she has a little bit of an argument with Butcher because Butcher looks at her with approval, which I didn't really see as approval. I guess because Annie said it was approval, but Butcher kind of looked like, because you could see through the mirror, and Annie's like, no, no, no. But it looked like he was looking at her in the sense where, what's wrong with you? Like, okay, that's a little bit concerning, to be honest with you. Oh, hello, baby. Hello, I don't know if she's going to jump on me over here. I don't know if she's going to jump on me. You want to talk about the boys? You want to talk about the boys? I don't know if my camera picked that up. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm going to keep petting my dog over here. Did you like watching The Boys? She spent a lot of time watching The Boys with me, honestly. And she's wagging her tail. She spent a lot of time watching The Boys with me. If you always want me to cut this stuff out, by the way, guys, just say the word and I will remember that. But I know sometimes on other channels people like seeing the dog. Usually she jumps up on me, but she is tired. She's so tired. She was just sleeping. Yeah, and I'm getting a big tail wag over here. And no, that microphone is not yours, Missy. That microphone is not yours. So anyways, Huey is compromised. He's bleeding out in the back, and he ends up using the car to cauterize the wounds, and everything seemingly is okay. But in the meantime, Maeve ends up figuring out a way to actually get back at Homelander because she finds a video of the plane. She finds a video of the plane. Yeah, Homelander's not okay. Homelander's not okay because Maeve has a video of the plane and she's going to release it to the public, or at least threaten Homelander. She wants to run away with her relationship. In the meantime, too, there is a hearing against Vought because now they want to use Lamplighter as a chief witness. Unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily end up going too great, but they end up figuring out as well, and I don't remember exactly how they figured it out, that Vought found out that Annie ended up betraying everybody. But regardless, they take Annie into captivity. She is in a room without any powers, and Huey wants to go on a rescue mission, and this is where we are with the very uncomfortable scene about the Lamplighter sitting down going, I'm just a cuck. I'm just a cuck. And then Huey's like, no, you want to be the guy who fucks the wife consensually. I thought that was pretty funny myself. So he convinces Lamplighter to go help him get into the 7 Tower, which this dude does not care whether he lives or dies because he goes up to the 7 Tower and it's like, all right, either I'm still in the system or we're going to get exploded. And that should have been a sign of what's to come, but I personally didn't see it. I didn't really realize that he just didn't care whether he lives or dies. I thought this was going to kind of be like a Lamplighter redemption arc a little bit. Not necessarily a redemption arc, but I thought he was a little bit more motivated than that. He gets up into the main tower, lights himself on fire, just kills himself, and Huey is forced to chop off his hand and run away to go find Annie. He ends up finding Annie, and I like that the dude just burned to death. He's sitting there, Huey cuts off his arm, he just goes, sorry about the really quick jump cut. My dog started barking, and then I went upstairs, and then my wife and I ended up playing basketball. So here I am, fresh out of a shower. My hair is a little bit of a mess, and I'm back recording. This video has had a little bit of a few hiccups, eh? The dog interrupting again. Apologies, everybody. Just if you want me to cut this stuff out of the edit, just let me know, and then I will keep this in mind moving forward. But anyways, what I was saying was I found it funny how Huey was looking down at this man who just burned alive. He has his hand in his own hand. He's like, fuck you, man. I thought that was really good. But anyways, so they end up having a little bit of a fight. Black Noir comes up. He's taking on Annie. And the way that Noir is subdued is Maeve comes in, saves the day. It seems like she's officially switched sides, and she gives him it was a peanut butter bar or a granola bar or something like that. She's like, he has a peanut allergy. And then they kick the EpiPen out of his hands, and then they end up taking off. Okay, they're making their grand escape. Now, Butcher, on the other hand, goes to, the name is escaping me at the moment, that scientist that raised Homelander. He ends up going into his house and threatening this guy's entire family if he doesn't testify against Vought. So, dude has no choice. And it's funny, like, Butcher's actor is fantastic, too, because he comes in as well, and I don't know who's bringing him tea, if it was his wife or his daughter or whatever it was, and she's like, tea, and then he's like, I haven't had a good cup of tea in such a long time. You are such a sweetheart. Thank you very, very much. Like, he just turns off and then starts going, all right, you CUNTS, right? I thought that was really funny. So the testimony ends up coming, and everybody is all up in arms. This is it. This is where we get him. And the scientist rolls in. Homelander starts looking really worried, like, hey, what are you doing over here? And then the same assassin who killed the CIA agent at the beginning of the movie, of the series, and the same person who ended up, well, supposedly the same person who was at the psychiatric ward. Everybody's head starts exploding. It's disgusting. It's on the news. Everybody's going crazy. So now everybody's at a loss for words. Like, okay, that was our witness. That was the way we get them. The doctor was about to testify. What happened? So nobody knows what happened. But anyways, after that, Homelander ends up taking off with Stormfront, and they convince Ryan to end up leaving Becca. Becca ends up coming out of, I think she was doing laundry or something. She walks out and she's like upset at Homelander. She's like, you a-holes, just screaming to herself or like muffin to herself. She walks down and the kid's like, Mom, why are you such a liar? Homelander and Stormfront told him some information and kind of convinced him to leave Becca. And Becca's freaking out, right? Because Homelander ended up just taking off with Ryan. Ryan didn't care. Mom, why'd you lie to me? And if I'm not mistaken, he said, I hate you. I could be wrong about that, but other than that, we're brought to another scene with A-Train, who is a little bit suspicious of the church. He joined the church. He's going to get back into the 7, but he doesn't know exactly what's going on. And the other part of that story, before we get into the climax of the story, is Maeve ends up breaking up with her girlfriend. The girlfriend saw the plane video, couldn't deal with Maeve. And to be honest with you, completely justified. I wouldn't want to deal with Maeve, no matter if she was forced or not. She's responsible for a lot of people dying. She didn't do anything. That's A-okay in my books. And that officially brings us to the climax of the season, and in my opinion, the best episode of The Boys that we've seen so far. So it starts off with Butcher learning that Becca ended up having Ryan captured. Becca started freaking out and finding out wherever they were living. It was under a pawn shop or something. She's banging on the door, Butcher, you need her. And Becca ends up joining the group. And I'm like, okay, sweet. And it was like this wonderful reunion, even though Butcher just kind of assured her and is like, hey, don't worry, I'll get you your kid. It's all going to be good. So Huey, everybody started meeting her, and it was a really cool thing. Everybody's like, we heard so much about you, Becca. Her and Butcher ended up loving each other. Like, it was a very, very happy, wholesome moment. I felt really good for them, which, again, why I love this story and why I love the writing, because it was kind of stripped away from us, right? So they figure out that Homelander, I don't remember how they got the information. Oh, it was Gus. Butcher ended up visiting Gus and wanted to make a deal. It's like, hey, you give me Homelander's location with Ryan. I will take care of everything, but I need you to get the kid and take him away. Solitary confinement, make up a story about why he has to leave Becca and how he's going to be safer this way. And Butcher is going back on the deal that he just made with Becca, and Becca made him promise and swear on his brother's soul. And I'm sitting over here thinking like, yeah, right, as if I kind of thought that Butcher, and again, to go back to this conversation, Butcher's actions are understandable, but the fact that you just promised him, that you promised your wife that you would not do that, and then go on to do it and get rid of the kid, that's totally not okay in my opinion. So we're brought to Homelander's cabin. Everybody is about to take him on, but he's distracted by this giant white noise thing, which woke up my baby, by the way. I was watching this show with my baby, and then she was in my arms just sleeping. I was like kind of doing this, watching her, and then that screeching sound came on, and she just went, that's the face she made. And then thankfully I was able to put her back to sleep, but I had to pause it for a minute. Homelander takes off, but in the moment, there was another scene that I missed that we talked about where Homelander and Stormfront end up bringing Ryan out into the public, and he freaks out about all the people, so he's not happy. Homelander can't exactly be the father that he wants to. Stormfront's talking about how he's like your own blood and you're scared of him. You can take on anything in the world, but you can't take on a kid. So the kid is uncomfortable. He's doing his his homework to himself. I don't remember what he was repeating. He was memorizing something and just, it was strange. So Becca and Butcher come in and Ryan's really happy to see her, really relieved. So they all take off. They all take off, right? And we have this really, really tough moment after that because Homelander's gone. He comes back to the house because the Vought agents were coming back to take Orion, but Butcher, which at the time I didn't think we knew, well, I at least didn't catch on that he was actually backing out of the deal. They pick up the phone and their names are something like Cunts from Vought or something like that. Homelander comes in, starts lasering them all down one by one, but in the meantime, Stormfront confronts everybody. Annie, Huey, everybody she confronts. Ryan, Butcher, Becca. She ends up flipping the car, I jumped the gun way too much on that. Butcher ends up telling Becca about the deal and admitting to it. And he wants to get them to safety. Take the car, get out of here, leave. And she's arguing with him, but she's like, come with us. You backed out on the deal. I still trust you. And they have this like beautiful, beautiful moment. And then Stormfront ends up flipping the car while they're in it. I thought that something horrible was going to happen. Maybe the kid was going to die. I don't really know what I was expecting, but I was like, oh my God. And then Maeve ends up coming and saving the day. Maeve has officially switched sides. Maeve ends up starting to beat up Stormfront. And I wanted to stop here because what I find interesting and something else that I guess I could talk about all of this in one. First of all, I ask you guys not to assume anything about my own political beliefs. I keep them very private on the channel. No matter what I say, I ask that you just don't assume. I'm trying to be as objective as possible here, like looking at things from an unbiased perspective. If you want to do, because I see it so often, I was actually thinking about it in the moment because Maeve came in and saved the day. Annie, Stormfront, and Kimiko were all there. They're all beating up, and they're all having this great moment. They're grunting, they're badass, you know. And even Frenchie in the back was like, oh, yes, I guess girls go get him, or whatever the saying was. They said that at some time earlier in the season when Vought wanted them to have a saying like, girls can kick ass, or something along those lines. I see so many movies nowadays trying to do like this girl power thing. Immediately your mind probably goes to Endgame, right? How unnatural it is, how forced it is, and that's where you get the backlash. That's the issue. This was so natural. This is how you do, if you want to do a girl power, it's so not girl power that I wouldn't even consider it girl power. The reason I'm saying is because it's so forced in so many shows nowadays, and I thought it was super cool in this time around. Because you have it so many times, like when you have Black Widow beating up these superheroes, which just doesn't make sense. You have all of these super characters coming in together. It's set up for Maeve to join them. It's natural for Annie and Kimiko to be together. It was written so they collide paths, and Maeve comes in and saves the day. It was natural for all of them to be there, so I wasn't sitting there going, here we go, we got the girl power scene. And I could imagine, like, I think that a lot of TV shows and a lot of writers need to learn from The Boys. Because, again, I didn't realize until it was over, and I was like, okay, that's how you do a girl scene, man. And I didn't realize it until Frenchie goes, yeah, girls can go get them, right? And they did the same thing. What I really, like, you know what? I'm not going to get into it. I was trying to think about, like, yeah, it has to do with Maeve, if that makes sense. But I don't think that's proper to talk about on YouTube. It's getting into dicey territory. But they shed an interesting light on how the media works with that. If you're kind of getting what, and again, I ask that you don't assume anything about my own political views, okay? But what I found interesting about The Boys was the way they handled that. They acknowledged like the girl power stuff and how forced it is in their own shows, and they acknowledged the same thing. If you're trying to get what I'm saying over here, something specific about Maeve and how it's not necessarily cared about by, it's not cared about by the people making the TV shows, but it's there for that reason. It's funny how The Boys kind of writes that story because, again, it's accurate. I ask that you don't assume anything about me, but talking about media in general, and people think that like all these filmmakers actually care about them and stuff. You know, they just care about clicks. That's pretty much the end of it. And they spent a lot of the season talking about that stuff. Sorry that I kind of have to dance around it there. Again, I ask that you don't assume anything about me. But anyways, to get back into the actual story, they have this awesome scene where Stormfront is getting the crap beat out of her. And then ultimately she ends up flying away and taking off, right? Homelander comes out of the cabin. Butcher, Becca, and Ryan are running through a forest. They're running for their lives, and then Stormfront shows up. There's nothing Butcher can do. Butcher's putting bullets into her. Butcher's hitting her with a crowbar. Nothing that he can do, and Ryan's over there screaming. And I had a feeling that because, again, the amazing writing from The Boys, they were setting up this idea that when Ryan gets emotional, that's how he starts kicking into his powers, and same thing with Homelander kind of setting it up. I love it, man. I love the connections. Just like I was talking about the girl power scene, that's how you do it. This is how you have a kid saves the day type thing. This is how you build up a scene where it's not just a kid beating up somebody like beating up somebody like Stormfront. This is how you do it. They set it up. Homelander says you need to tap into your hate. This is what you need to do. You are powerful. You are me, right? We have this horrible scene with Becca, and Stormfront's grabbing her by the neck, but not just killing her yet, because she's like, I like to see the lights go out. There's nothing Butcher can do. There's nothing he can do. Ryan's screaming in the corner. And I assumed that Ryan was going to save the day, because I made that connection myself, and I was like, all right, so he's just going to it was still like really, really tense. And we see this just giant flash, right? He gets angry. He was pushed past his limit. And Ryan killed Becca. Almost. But she's dying. I don't remember if it was a slice in the neck. Regardless, she was bleeding out. Stormfront is completely burned. And Ryan's sitting there crying and screaming, saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And Butcher's reaction, again, the acting is fantastic. Fantastic. Butcher made me want to cry in my chair. And I've been allowing myself to feel, because I really want to get into these movies. And again, I've talked about this when I was talking about Inside Out, I think, because Inside Out wanted to make me tear up. Say what you will. I don't care. I'm one of those men don't cry type people. But I've allowed myself recently to get not emotional, but get emotionally invested into the shows. Just watch them for what they are. Because typically throughout my life, I would sit back and be like, just a movie, but I couldn't help it, man. No tears rolled down my face. I fought it down, but I was actually like, my eyes were getting watery at Butcher just screaming for help. He finally got Becca after these 2 seasons. He finally saw her. The relief that she's not dead. He can save her from Homelander. And she's bleeding out because Ryan ended up being the one to kill her. She's bleeding out and she's begging, like, it's not Ryan's fault. It's not Ryan's fault. Promise me you'll take care of him. And then this is where I'm thinking, like, oh, he's not going to take care of him. There's no chance he takes care of him. I thought that we were going to see a little bit of a battle there. She ends up dying, and Butcher picks up the crowbar again. He's looking like he's ready to just absolutely destroy Ryan. Ryan's just sitting there going, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry. And I'm like, whew. But like, what really got me, man, was Butcher screaming for help. Like, he just sold that. Oh my God. Fantastic. Homelander drops in. All bloody, broken from all of the people there. Butcher ends up saving Ryan. Butcher ends up choosing Ryan. Butcher lives up to Becca's promise, man. And that's what I love to see. Because Homelander could have taken Ryan. Homelander could have corrupted Ryan. But Butcher picked up Ryan, put him over his shoulder, and is kind of looking after him like his own. Which I loved. Homelander's ready to absolutely destroy them. And he ends up getting blackmailed again with the video. And you can just see that it's tearing Homelander from the inside out. Not like absolutely destroying them. His own son's being taken away from... It's so crazy, that sequence of events. Butcher has a girlfriend. Homelander uses the R word. Homelander R words that lady. Has a kid. Loves the kid. Homelander gets close to the kid. And that man of the girlfriend that you just R worded is now looking over your kid and protecting him from you as a monster. Crazy. Crazy. Homelander looks, and Stormfront is frying. She's cooked. She's absolutely dying. And Homelander has no choice but to take off. Butcher saved the day. Becca's dead. Ryan is with Butcher. Everything ends up getting cleared up. Stormfront is revealed to be a Nazi. Annie's welcome back into the 7, but there's clearly hate between them, and Homelander's forced to sit there being like, Annie, you were wrongly accused. Maeve, I don't know what I would do without you. You both are really awesome. The boys end up getting cleared of all charges. And then we have another scene with A-Train being welcomed back in the 7 from the church. And the Deep... the Deep still isn't welcome back, and then he actually freaks out on the church. He's like, F you, man. I gave up my whole bank account for this. So it looks like that the Deep is just completely screwed now, because he was thinking that he was going to get welcomed back in the 7, which, good, by the way. I hope the Deep is suffering, and I hope he continues to suffer, by the way. There is no forgiving the acts that he did. Just like Homelander, there's no forgiving what happens over there. And it's funny because in this scene, I don't know if the Deep was putting on an act, because he was kind of like freaking out where it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get back into the 7. Like, I don't know. I don't know whether or not it was genuine, if he was actually going through a change. And then he starts going off where it's like, he made me marry this wife who gives horrible blowjobs. So I don't know if he was just acting. I don't know. If anybody could clear that up in the comments, I would appreciate it if we know. But if you know, like, moving forward to season 3 and 4, I ask that you don't spoil, please. Other than that, we are brought back to the name is escaping me. I'm sorry. The higher up. There was some information there. And then this silent assassin is revealed to us because, boom, head explodes again. The head explodes again. The CIA takes Ryan in, and then Huey ends up getting a job with Newman. He wants to apply and wants to kind of stand up on his own 2 feet. He's in a relationship with Annie. They end up kissing each other. Everything's okay. He starts working as a job, and we figure out that Newman is the is the assassin. You can see her blowing somebody up, and like the eyes kind of changing. But the problem is, I thought it was the bald girl from the psych ward. I thought that's what it was because she walked out and she was exploding people's heads. Unless now that they're trying to stabilize a compound V, you can choose what power to give people. But it makes sense for it to be Newman. I'm so confused by that, but it obviously seems like that's going to be setting up the next part. And I don't really know what we can really dive into with next season, but I am extremely excited. I loved this season. The last episode was one of the greatest episodes of TV that I've seen. Butcher, I said his name earlier. I'm really bad with actor names. I'm sorry. Whoever plays Homelander and whoever plays Butcher really sells the deal, man. Like, they are fantastic at what they do. Butcher made me want to cry on my couch watching this alone with my baby. Like, it's crazy. What a good show. What a really, really good show. And apparently the next seasons get better. I can't wait for it. So, if you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be covering Season 3 and Season 4 when I do watch them. I haven't started either season yet. I'm very excited to do so. So, subscribe if you are new here. Thank you very much for being here. It's probably a long video. I really appreciate you guys sticking around. Thank you so much for watching. If you are interested, I have 2 videos on screen for you if you'd like to keep watching the channel. The first one is Season 1 of The Boys, and then I also have Season 2 of Invincible down here. You should check that one out. You should check out one of the videos, guys. I will see you over there or in the next video. Take care.